I work as an international student advisor at the international office, and I'm joined by a few colleagues as well from the international office who are working in the background. I do want to give you a heads up. You will have seen the prompt on your screen that this session is being recorded. So we're going to go over a lot of content. It is a 2-hour session, so I hope you have some water, some tea or something, because we're going to talk a lot. I'm going to talk a lot, and we will be recording and making this recording available for later viewing. So don't worry if you miss stuff, you'll be able to consult the recording later. And we're also going to share the PowerPoint presentation, which is going to be helpful because we have a lot of links on there for you. So yeah, let's just get into it. I will be turning off my camera so that my computer doesn't fail me. We've had a lot of tech issues and I don't want anything to prevent the session from going forward. So I'm going to turn off my video and let's just go into it. So this info session really is part of our immigration advising services that the international office offers. So we are 3 actually staff members from the international office who are regulated and designated to be able to provide you with immigration advice. So in Canada, not just anyone can give immigration advice. It's really strictly regulated. So we are 3 staff members at the international office who can answer your questions and help you with this. My colleague Ali Belbashir, who delivered the French session, the French version of this presentation yesterday, and my colleague Farha as well. So we're all 3 of us regulated Canadian immigration consultants. Now, the goal of this presentation really is to provide you with a lot of information about study permits, how applications are processed by Immigration Canada, and also a tutorial. We actually will be logging onto the website, building an application together and going over step by step how to fill out the forms and submit that application. So by the end of this session, hopefully you'll know exactly what you need to do to apply for a study permit. So we're going to go over some definitions and key concepts. Immigration has a lot of very specific terminology that might not be obvious what they're referring to. So we're going to do a quick overview about that. We're going to talk about the application timeline. So how long it can take to process an application, when you should apply, things like that. We're going to go over the documents required. I'll touch a little bit about the study direct stream or SDS. We'll talk about biometrics, medical exams, processing times, the famous processing times that can be very, very lengthy. Like I said, we're going to be doing a walkthrough of how to generate the application. And then what to do after you've applied. And then, of course, most important, I will be taking your questions. So the question period will be at the end, but that doesn't mean that you can't type your question into the chat as it comes to you. I have some colleagues, like I said, who will be collecting the questions as I go on. I do encourage you to maybe listen to the presentation first, though, because I might answer your question proactively. But otherwise, if you're worried you're going to forget, just feel free to pop it in the chat, and I will happily answer it later. So let's talk about some definitions first. So Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC. This is the government department responsible for processing immigration applications, whether that's for temporary residence, so study permits, work permits, visitor visas, or whether that's for permanent residence applications or citizenship applications. So they're really the government department responsible for all of that. Temporary resident visa, or TRV. Some students call this a study visa, student visa. We're going to go over what that looks like. But just know if I say TRV, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your visa. Electronic travel authorization, or ETA. That's another type of travel authorization. If you will either have a TRV or an ETA, depending on your country of citizenship. or unless you're a US citizen, in which case you will have neither. We'll go over what a study permit looks like, co-op or internship work permit. We'll go over that as well. Co-op or internship work permit is a special permit for students who are admitted to programs that have a mandatory work experience or work component. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Letter of introduction, or LOI. This is the letter that IRCC will send you if your study permit application is approved. So this is a common misconception I find. When you apply for your study permit, you won't get the study permit by mail. When you're applying outside Canada, you'll actually just get a letter saying your application was approved, which you'll then need to present to a border officer when you arrive in Canada. So that's the LOI, the letter of introduction. That is your study permit approval letter. DLI, or designated learning institution. In Canada, all of the institutions, universities, colleges, polytechnics, whatever, they all have to be designated to be able to accept and welcome international students. So that is what a designated learning institution is. Someone that is an institution that has been designated to accept international students. Offer of admission is what we call it. It's your letter that you would have received from the university. IRCC likes to call it a letter of acceptance, or LOA. So just know that the LOA, if you see LOA or letter of acceptance, they mean your offer of admission. Okay, so temporary resident visa, TRV. So on the slide here, you can see it's like a sticker or counterfoil that IRCC places in your passport. This one's a little bit old, so your TRV might look nicer, a little bit more modern than this one. But it really is like a sticker that is placed in your passport. And it's for foreign nationals who are from visa required countries. So the visa is basically the authorization that allows you to travel to Canada by plane. So it really is like a sticker in your passport. Now, electronic travel authorization, or ETA, that one's a little bit different. This is for foreign nationals who come from visa exempt countries. So for example, France. So unlike the visa, which is a physical kind of sticker in your passport, the ETA is completely electronic. So it's electronically linked to your passport. So you can never see an ETA. But when your study permit application is approved, you'll have the ETA number indicated on that letter. And that's all you'll need. So you just know it's linked to your passport. And as I mentioned, US citizens are exempt from the ETA requirement, and also the TRV requirement. So that is for that. So study permit. So this is what a study permit looks like. It is like a sheet of paper that you will receive when you enter Canada for the first time. And you present your LOI, or letter of introduction, to the border officer. Again, this one that you see here is a little bit older, so yours will probably look nicer than this one, but it will look basically the same. So you absolutely need to have a valid study permit if you're going to be studying inside Canada. And it's what will authorize you to study, and it will also authorize you to work during your studies. So you can see here a little bit, there's conditions towards the bottom of the study permit, and it says may accept employment on or off campus. So the main difference is the TRV, or the visa, is basically just a travel authorization. So it'll authorize you to travel to Canada. That's it. The study permit is what allows you to study and work in Canada. So you do need both to be able to carry out your studies here in Canada, either TRV or ETA. So the co-op or internship work permit, as you can see, looks very similar to a study permit. And again, this work permit is really just for students who are in programs that have a mandatory work component. So if you're in a co-op program, or a program that has mandatory internships, you do need to apply for this work permit. You can apply for it at the same time as your study permit if it's mentioned on your offer of admission. I'll go into that a little bit more later. But basically, this allows students to work full-time during their studies for that mandatory work component. So yeah, so that is the co-op work permit. And then finally, we have the letter of introduction. So this, like I said, is your study permit approval letter. So it's the letter that is sent to you if your study permit application is approved and you applied outside Canada. So you'll have this, and then you'll also have your either your visa in your passport or your ETA, which is also electronically linked to your passport. And then you'll travel to Canada. You'll present this letter and a few other supporting documents to the border officer, and then you'll receive your study permit. So this is just an example of what the LOI looks like. Okay, so those are the key definitions kind of out of the way. So now, who needs to apply for a study permit? Now, so most foreign nationals do need to have a study permit in order to be authorized to study in Canada. If you're outside Canada, technically speaking, you don't need a study permit because you're not physically inside Canada. However, we would still strongly encourage you to apply for one, even though you're studying from outside Canada, so that when you are ready to come to Canada, you have that authorization already. If you're inside Canada and you have another status, let's say you're here as a visitor or a worker, or you have protected person status, you still also need a study permit to be able to study. And you're able to have both statuses. So you could have a work permit and a study permit at the same time. There are a few exemptions to who needs a study permit, such as so, for example, diplomats who are assigned to a mission in Canada and the accompanying family members of a diplomat. So they are actually exempt from the study permit requirement. But otherwise, odds are you need a study permit. We have a couple, I would say, of the most popular student profiles here on the slide, where I guess I'll call them the most common types of students that we deal with, that we help. So obviously, students traveling alone. This is probably the most common student profile that we see. So students who are just coming to do their program. Second most popular is probably students traveling with their family members, so either their spouse or common law partner and or their children. We also then have diplomats and their accompanying family members. And then finally, we also have minor students who, have to be accompanied by either their parent or legal guardian, or they have to have a custodian. So those are the most common student profiles, and we'll go over a little bit each one, but we're going to be mainly focused on the first profile, which is a student traveling alone. I did want to talk a little bit more about what I mean as for a minor, though. So in Ontario, which is where the University of Ottawa is located, the age of majority is 18. So if you are under 18, this means that you are considered a minor in Ontario. So your parents or legal guardians have to prove that if you're a minor child, you'll have the care and support that you need during your stay in Canada. So if you are under the age of 17, the minor has to come with either their parent or legal guardian, or they need to have a custodian appointed to them in Canada. And a custodian is basically a Canadian citizen or permanent resident who is going to be responsible for taking care of that minor child. Now, if you are 17 years old and older, the custodian is actually optional. So when you fill out your application, let's say you're 17, you're filling it out, you don't have to include that custodian declaration. However, an officer can request one on a case-by-case basis, but it is optional. So it's up to you whether or not you want to include one proactively or wait to see if it's asked of you by the immigration officer. The University of Ottawa cannot be a custodian, so it's not a service that we offer. but there are a few organizations in Ontario, in Ottawa, that you could look into if you are trying to find a custodian and you don't have a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen who can be one. And then we're giving you here the IRCC link for more information. Okay, let's keep going. So I wanted to change gears a bit and talk about something a little bit more serious. So misrepresentation. It is a crime to lie or send false information or documents to IRCC. It is considered fraud, and it's referred to as misrepresentation. So you're misrepresenting certain facts about yourself that are untrue. So document fraud like this, that could involve, either false or altered documents. So passports, visas, and travel documents, falsified offers of admission, diplomas, degrees, birth certificates, marriage certificates, police certificates. Basically anything can be falsified. So it can include any of those documents. And misrepresentation can also include answering a question untruthfully. So I'll give you an example. In an immigration application, there is a question on the form that asks you if you've ever been denied a visa or denied entry to any country. Let's say you put no, but in reality, you were refused a visa for the US a few years ago. Well, that could be considered misrepresentation because you misrepresented something about yourself. So it can be something like that, or it can be, like I said, document fraud. So very serious, always important to be truthful and honest in your applications with IRCC. It can have very serious consequences. So the least severe would be just a refusal of your application. And then getting a refusal will have a ripple effect on future applications. So every time you get a refusal, it does make every other application kind of more heavily scrutinized. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when reapplying. It could lead to a 5-year ban to Canada or inadmissibility and even criminal charges. So all that to say, very serious. Don't do it. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of questions pop up in the chat. So I just want to remind you, when you're sending your questions, make sure you send it to everyone in the chat, because I do have colleagues here with me who are collecting these questions into a document that I will then use to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation. We are recording, so you'll have access to this Q&A after the fact. And then if ever we don't get to your question, we do offer these recurring Q&A sessions every week, and we'll share that information with you as well. So don't worry if you don't get your question answered today. There will be other opportunities to ask them. Okay, so when should you apply for your study permit? It's a question we get very often. We basically recommend applying as soon as you receive your offer of admission from the university, and at the absolute latest, and this would be only if you're planning to study online from outside Canada, we would strongly encourage you to apply before starting your program. But if your program is going to be here in person, which, knock on wood, that's the direction we're heading in now, then definitely the sooner you apply, the better. And the reason we say that is because the processing times are just very, very inconsistent, and they can be long. So the sooner your application is in the queue or pipeline, the better. How to apply for the study permit. So because of our friend COVID-19, you do have to submit your application online. So IRCC can't process paper or in-person applications still. So you should apply for your study permit online, which means you need to create an account with IRCC. And you can see that we have that hyperlinked. We do have a tutorial available on our YouTube channel on how to create a GC key or IRCC account. Maybe my colleague can put that link in the chat. Once you create your IRCC account, you'll be able to use it for many other applications in the future. Let's say you get admitted to a co-op program, for example, you want to apply for a co-op or internship work permit, you'll be able to just use this same account and apply for it. And then once you have your IRCC account, you can also use it if you're going to be submitting a family application. So for example, let's say you have a spouse or common law partner and you want to apply for them as well, you can submit both applications together at the same time using one IRCC account. So, and it's obviously free to create an IRCC account. So, so that is about the account. I wanted to talk a little bit about using a representative. So some students do choose to work with either an agency or a lawyer or a consultant when applying for their study permit. You do not need to. You can apply on your own. However, if you would prefer to use, a representative or an agency, please make sure they are legitimate. So, I talked about it a little bit earlier, but in Canada, immigration is regulated. So you can check to make sure that the person you want as your representative is accredited to give immigration advice and do these immigration applications. So the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, or CICC, actually has a registry of regulated Canadian immigration consultants and regulated international student immigration advisors to kind of identify them and disclose like their fitness to practice. So if you're going to be going the representative route, definitely make sure you check that they are legit. The University of Ottawa cannot be your representative. So I know I talked about it. We are 3 consultants working at the international office, but we cannot represent students. We can't fill out immigration applications on your behalf. What we can do is provide you with the tools and knowledge for you to be able to submit your own application. So that's really our goal. We want to empower you to be able to submit these applications on your own. So we're here to give advice, we're here to give info, tools, but we cannot do the application for you. If you do use a representative, you should declare it in your application, and that will make, you'll have an additional form in your document checklist to fill out, just to declare that you used a representative. Okay. Speaking of forms in your checklist, let's talk a little bit about the application form itself. So it's different depending on whether you will be applying from outside Canada or inside Canada. So if you are outside Canada, either way, once you use your IRCC account and you fill out the questionnaire, your answers to the questionnaire will basically help IRCC generate the right application forms for you. So, so once you fill out the form, let's say the questionnaire, let's say you're outside Canada, the correct application form is actually the IMM 1294E. So that is the application form when you're applying for a study permit from outside Canada. If you are inside Canada, basically, once you answer the questionnaire, it'll be not to apply for a study permit, but it'll be to modify your stay in Canada. And so the correct form is actually IMM 5709. So it's extending your stay as a student. So that's for students who are already here in Canada and have a status. That's that form that they would fill out. Now, and this is only for applicants outside Canada. When you are applying online, your document checklist, it will not include all of the required documents specific to your country of citizenship or residence. So, and the reason for this is because certain visa offices, they do add their own specific requirements based on a number of reasons. So when applying outside Canada, it's always important to check to make sure if your visa office has instructions or not. Not all countries do, so it's possible you'll check and there are no visa office instructions, in which case, great, just focus on your regular checklist, but always check. So you can see here, we're giving you the link. So open that link, select your country, get documents, and then if there is one that says, visa office instructions study permit, make sure to take a look at that. And then if there are extra documents on there, you should upload those in your document checklist in the client information section of your application. And I'll show you what that looks like later when we do the walkthrough. Okay. I wanted to talk now to give you some context on how study permit applications are assessed. So when an officer is assessing a study permit application, they're basically looking at whether or not the applicant has bona fide reasons for coming to Canada. I'm giving you a link to what bona fide means, but it basically means genuine or true. So they want to make sure that you have genuine reasons for coming to study in Canada, that you are in fact a student. Your primary reason for this application to study in Canada. It is on you, the applicant, to establish in your application that you are a genuine student who will leave Canada following the completion of their studies. So this is something that causes a lot of issues for students, I know. So applying for a study permit is a temporary residence application. And because it's a temporary residence application, you have to have that temporary intention. That has to be the primary intention when you're applying for your study permit. You are, of course, allowed to have other aspirations in terms of staying here longer after your studies. That's fine. It's called dual intent. You are allowed to have both intentions. However, when applying for your study permit, the primary intention of your application has to be to study. So just make sure that when you are building your application, it's very clear, that it's a temporary application. It's an application to study temporarily in Canada. So what do I mean by that? What factors are officers looking at when they evaluate your application? So they're definitely going to be looking at the purpose of you studying in Canada and the length of time that you will spend in Canada. They're going to be looking at whether or not you have the means to support yourself during your studies and any other support that you would have available to you. So do you have enough money to be able to afford this program? Do you have family in Canada? What support do you have available? They're going to be looking at your ties to your home country and your links to your home country. So what obligations do you have in your home country? Do you own any property? Do you have family members who are dependent on your return? Those kinds of things. So economic and social. So whether that be, do you have a job right now? Do you own property? Social ties. Are you part of an organization? Do you volunteer? Like anything like that, anything that ties you to your home country, they're looking at that in the application. Like what reasons does the applicant have to return to their home country after their studies? They're going to be looking at the likelihood of you leaving at the end of your authorized stay. So just what we were talking about now. They're going to look at your compliance with other requirements of either an act and regulation that are applicable to students or temporary residents. So this can include your past compliance in terms of your schooling. So, are you a good student? Overstaying, did you ever visit another country and go over the validity of your visa? Stuff like that. So if you have studied or traveled in the past and you respected the conditions of that stay, mentioning that in this application can strengthen your application. So definitely don't be shy to give a travel history, because you getting authorization for other countries and respecting the conditions of that stay, that can help an officer determine that, okay, he respected the conditions of the stay before, it would be likely that he would respect the conditions of the stay now. So they will be looking at that, your past compliance. And then obviously they'll be looking at any concerns that could make you inadmissible to Canada. So, any criminal history, that kind of thing. We're giving you a link here on this slide so you can read a little bit more about how officers assess a study permit application. So one way that we encourage students to kind of address all of these things that I've just talked about is to write a detailed and strong study plan. So your study plan would basically outline what your goals are, your timeline, and then how you plan to achieve those goals. So it should give the officer a really clear idea of like the purpose of you studying in Canada, the means you have available, and like what your studies will do for you in your home country after. You can see here that write a study plan is hyperlinked. We do have basically a tutorial how to write an effective study plan. So definitely check that out once you have this PowerPoint presentation. So whether or not a study plan is mandatory, it will depend on your visa office. So some visa offices do make it mandatory, but even if it's not mandatory, I would very, 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 very strongly encourage you to write one, because it is a really good way to make it clear to the officer your reasons for studying in Canada. So what kind of things should be mentioned in a study plan? So like I said, definitely the purpose of application and of the program in general. So what are your reasons for studying at U Ottawa and coming to Canada? So what makes this U Ottawa program unique? Why this program and not another program in your country or another country? Like what will this program give you? And how will it help you advance in your career or change careers even? And then and this is important, if you've already completed prior studies, how does this tie into that? So how is this program connected to your previous studies or your employment background? And then if you've done a language test, for example, when you applied for admission at U Ottawa, you could include that as well and explain how you met the admission requirements for U Ottawa. You'll also want to talk in your study plan about your intended plans after your studies. So what's your plan once you're done? Do you potentially already have an informal job offer from an employer in your home country or your country of residence? Are there job postings that show that you need to have an MBA to be able to apply for this job? What evidence can you provide that shows how a degree from U Ottawa will increase your employability in your home country or your country of residence? So things like that. How will this program help you after? The other section of your study plan that you'll want to talk about are your ties to your home country. So as I mentioned, when an officer is looking at a study permit application, they want to look at your application and determine like, okay, based on this application, this applicant would leave Canada at the end of their stay based on all they have going on back home. So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to convince the officer that you wouldn't likely overstay. So you should be explaining and providing supporting documents of your family ties. So what family members do you have who are in your home country and are dependent on you on your return? And then you want to talk about also like financial or economic ties. So do you own any property or any other financial assets, bank accounts, employment, anything like that? And then this is important, everything in your study plan that you're talking about, as much as possible, you should corroborate that with actual evidence. So if you're talking about property that you own, include a document that proves the ownership. If you're talking about your father funding your studies, will include your father's employment details, bank statements, everything as much as possible you do need to prove in your application. So you can include, like I said, letters about employment positions, or if you have like an informal offer, like I said, of employment for when you return, any assets, property, notarized letters written by family members saying that they depend on you to come back. Let's say your father has a business and you decide you're going to go get your MBA. And then when you're done MBA, you're going to take over your father's business. Well, that's great. Include that in a notarized letter so that it's clear that like you have an end goal after your program, like this program serves a purpose for after. If you're part of a community organization or church or something, you can include proof of that membership. Something that expects you to where they would expect you to return and resume your involvement. So anything like that, anything that ties you to your home country is what should be mentioned here. Okay, I want to talk now a little bit about financial capacity. So we talked about it a little bit before when we went over what officers assess when they look at a study permit application. Financial capacity is one of the biggest ones. So you need to prove that you have the means or the funds to support yourself and any family members who come with you while you are in Canada. And this is important. So if you are planning to bring family members with you, whether that's a spouse or common law partner or a child, you will need to demonstrate more funds than if you were coming alone. So in your study permit application, you need to demonstrate the funds for your first year of studies. However, the officer is going to be looking at that the first year, but you should also have a plan for the rest of your program as well, right? It's not just about the first year. The first year is what's going to be the most heavily scrutinized, but you do need to have the funds to support yourself for your program in its entirety. So if you have, for example, like your parents or an aunt, uncle, family member, friend who's going to be helping you with your tuition fees or supporting you in Canada, you should detail their financial solvability. So if the money is not in your own bank account, you will need to include the bank account of someone else, the person who is giving you money. And more than that, you need to then link that person's financial info to you. So it's not enough to just include, let's say, your parents' bank statements, because then there's still no link. There's nothing that confirms that they were going to give you that money for school. So I know it sounds a little bit silly, but you really have to make it explicit that they will be providing you with the funds in their account. So that means a notarized letter, ideally notarized, that says like, we will be supporting our son throughout his program in Canada. Like everything that you're going to say in your application needs to be corroborated with actual proof to have a strong study permit application. You can see here key elements to prove your financial capacity. So that is the IRCC link that you should look at. That will give you an idea of how much money you need to demonstrate. So like I said, it's you need to demonstrate the funds for your first year of studies. If you are going to be coming alone, that means that you're required to demonstrate the equivalent of $10,000 Canadian plus your tuition fees, the cost of your tuition fees for your first year of studies. So that's the minimum amount that you want to have available to you when you submit your study permit application. Again, if you're coming alone. And so I encourage you to check out that link later because it also gives some examples of the documents, financial documents that you can include. So like I said, just in terms of examples, letters of financial support. So written and signed by your sponsor, whether that's your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever. I will say that, because we get the question a lot, like, what if it's my cousin or my friend, my third cousin? That's fine. Your sponsor can technically be anybody. But the further the relationship is from you, like the further away, the more you might have to explain in your application, if that makes sense. So ideally, it would be someone close to you, like a parent, where you don't really need to explain that relationship as much, but just be prepared that, if it's someone more distant, just be prepared for that to be a little bit more scrutinized by the officer. So definitely would recommend having a notarized letter in that case if it's someone further away from you, like a friend or a cousin or something like that. Proof of funds, bank statements, usually at least for the past 4 months, but check your visa office instructions again. Some visa offices require past 6 months, and some also require like tax records for certain years. So definitely check your visa office instructions. And then, like I said, an employment letter can be helpful as well. Another question we get a lot about financial capacity is, let's say your offer of admission includes funding. Can I just upload my offer of admission as proof of funds if I have a scholarship that basically covers everything? Well, it basically depends on the format of that funding that's in your offer of admission. So, and this is mostly at the graduate level. Soft funded research bursaries, that can be included in terms of proof of funds if it's in the form of a scholarship or a research bursary. However, if the funding is actually going to be in the form of a teaching or research assistantship, so a TA or RA contract, where in this case, the funds are more considered income, this unfortunately cannot count as proof of funds in your study permit application. So in general, with your study permit application, you have to prove your funds with what we call liquid assets, or funds that are readily available to you. So you can't count on funds that are going to be earned in the future if you get a TA or RA position. That can't count in a study permit application. So it has to be funds that are readily available to you. So if you did get an admission scholarship, doctoral scholarship, whatever, that can count because those are funds that are going to be available to you right when you start your program. Unlike the TA or RA, which is like if you get a position and then you're going to get a pay stub, that kind of thing, that can't count. So, and that goes for other types of employment too. Like if you include pay stubs as proof of your funds, your past pays can count, but you can't say like, oh, future income will be able to cover like the 10,000. No, like it has to be funds readily available to you. You have to have the funds already available to you when you submit your application. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about this proof of work requirement. So if co-op or a mandatory internship or practicum or other work experience, if that is mentioned somewhere on your offer of admission, you can apply for a co-op or internship work permit at the same time that you apply for your study permit. What you would have to do is when you're doing the eligibility questionnaire, which we will go over soon, there'll be a question that says, is work an essential component of your studies? And if you answer yes, then that means there's going to be an extra document added to your document checklist, which is evidence of work requirement in study. And then you'll basically be uploading your complete offer of admission twice. You're going to be putting it in that letter of acceptance section, and you're going to be putting it in the evidence of work requirement in study fields. If you're going to do this, so if your offer of admission says co-op or internship or stage or something, I recommend that you highlight that. And then, like I said, you're going to upload it twice in your actual application. You're not going to get a separate letter from the co-op office until you're formally accepted into the program, which happens sometimes not till your second year. So again, this is only if it's mentioned on your offer of admission. If there's nothing about this on your offer of admission, just apply for your study permit. You'll be able to apply for your work permit once you're here in Canada and you actually have a document that says you have a mandatory work component. For several programs, if not all of them, the work component is happens later in the program anyway, so you'll have time to apply for the work permit and secure it. So just to recap, the co-op or internship work permit is just for students who have a mandatory work component as part of their program. Otherwise, your study permit will actually authorize you to work. You will not need another work permit. Your study permit will allow you to work on campus, off campus, all built into your study permit. Okay. I did want to talk a little bit about the Student Direct or SDS stream. So this is a program that's available for citizens or legal residents of certain countries, and I'm not gonna list them all, but you can see them on the screen. So it is definitely not required to apply through the SDS, but some students like to do it. I will say the biggest benefit of the SDS program is supposed to be the faster processing time. So in general, if you're applying through the SDS, you're supposed to be able to get a decision within 20 calendar days. I have to be honest and tell you that with the pandemic, we have seen several students with applications in the SDS that have not received this processing time. So all that to say is, do with that information what you will. You might not get your 20-day processing. But that is the idea behind the SDS stream, is that the supporting documents required are a little bit more strict, and they're supposed to help facilitate the faster processing of the application. So if you're going to apply through the SDS stream, you do need to prepay your tuition fees for your first year of studies. And because of the timing, you will need to prepay your tuition fees before the tuition fees for that year are even set. So what you'll need to do is basically use the university fees website to calculate your tuition fees, estimate what your tuition fees will be. So you go on there and then you select your program. If you're an undergrad student, you want to select the fall and winter terms. If you're a grad student, you want to select fall, winter, and spring, summer, unless the spring, summer is a scheduled break for your program. And then that'll give you an estimate of your tuition fees. And then you'll be able to make a payment using one of the accepted methods of payment. You'll have to wait a few days because with international wire transfers, it can take a few days to actually appear in your account. And then once it is there, you'll be able to get a receipt from your UOZone account. If you are a resident of one of these countries that you see on the screen, you will be receiving an email that kind of explains how to do this, how to guess your fees and stuff. So I won't spend more time on it now, but just know that it is an option for people from these countries. And and it is very strict in terms of supporting documents. So that's a question I get often, like, oh, if I have everything but this one thing, can I still apply? No, there are no exceptions for SCS for missing documents. So you really do have to meet every single requirement. The IELTS, the GIC, all of it, to be able to benefit from the SDS processing. But like I said, not mandatory to apply through SDS. With COVID, I know that it can be sometimes challenging to submit a complete application. So what we would recommend is that, I mean, as much as possible, we would encourage you to try to get all of the documents. Submitting a complete application is always better than an incomplete. But if there's something that you really are not able to get, and it's getting late, it's getting really close to the start of your program, I would recommend submitting your application even if it's incomplete. You should not receive an automatic refusal for a missing document. Now, that being said, you do absolutely need to have an offer of admission in your application. So IRCC will not process any study permit application that does not have a letter of acceptance. So that's like the one exception to what I'm telling you now. But besides that, if you're missing another document, instead of that document, include a letter of explanation for that missing document and proof of why you're unable to obtain that document. And then once that document is available, use the IRCC web form. And you can see we have a little screenshot here of what it looks like and the link to ask IRCC to add it to your submitted application. Again, as much as possible, we always recommend submitting complete applications, but I know that's not always possible. So this is an option as well. I wanted to talk a little bit now about biometrics. So biometrics, what we mean by that is providing your fingerprints and photo for IRCC, and it's a requirement when applying for a study permit. For Canada, most offices are open again, although that can change, as we know, with the past 2 years we've been in. Anything is possible, so definitely check before you make any plans. Book an appointment. I recommend that you book an appointment to give your biometrics as soon as possible, only because appointment slots can fill up really quickly. So you do need to go to obviously an official location that's designated by IRCC. You can see we give you the link here. And then you have to bring your biometrics instruction letter with you to the appointment. You'll receive that biometrics instruction letter after you apply for your study permit. So when you apply for your study permit, you'll have a question that asks you if you've ever provided biometrics before. If you have provided biometrics, great. They stay valid for 10 years. So if you've done it in the past 10 years, you will not need to do it. But if you haven't, you will. And then when you answer yes to that question, it'll add the biometrics fee to your application, which are $85. And then after you submit your application, your study permit application, you'll receive your biometrics instruction letter, and that's when you should book your appointment to give your biometrics. Your study permit application will stay pending until your biometrics are collected. So they're not going to process your application without the biometrics. If your nearest official location is open, but maybe you can't give biometrics due to the pandemic, or if the office is closed, or if all the appointments are full and you can't get an appointment within the timeline that's indicated on your letter, that's okay, but you need to inform IRCC of the difficulty you're having. So again, you'd be using the IRCC web form to explain why you need more time to provide your biometrics. If you are applying inside Canada, good news, you are exempt from giving biometrics. So right now, because of the pandemic, they are not, temporary residents are not being asked to provide their biometrics at this time. Now that might change as we, I don't even want to say it out loud, I don't want to jinx it, but as things, knock on wood, progress the way they're progressing, that this exemption might change. But for now, No biometrics if you are inside Canada and applying for a study permit. Okay, let's talk about medical exams now. So it is very possible that you will need a medical exam when applying for your study permit. You will need one if you have lived in a designated country or territory for more than 6 months in the past year. We give you the list here, so definitely go check the list. If your country where you're living now is on that list and you've been there for more than 6 months in the past year, you will need to undergo a medical exam. Or if you want to work in a job that brings you into close contact with people, such as a healthcare worker, or if you're going to be doing an internship in a school, like you're studying medicine, anything like that, then you'll also need a medical exam, even if you're not from a designated country. So as I mentioned, like I said, your study permit will allow you to work while you're in Canada. So definitely keep that in mind. If you want to work in one of these jobs, then you should do a medical exam. When you can do your medical exam, there are two options. Just give me 1 second. Too many words. I needed some water. Okay. So 2 options to do your medical exam. You can either do your medical exam before you even submit your study permit application. So this is called an upfront medical exam. And this can be useful because it can help facilitate the processing of your application. And what I mean by that is because you're going to be submitting it proactively, you don't have to wait for IRCC to ask you to go do a medical exam. The other option is to do it after you submit your application, once IRCC sends you a request. And this is also perfectly valid, but then that can add time to the processing of your application. Honestly, there are pros and cons for both options. So if you do it upfront, great, because then you don't have, like I said, you don't have to wait for IRCC to ask you, you're doing it proactively. If you wait to do it, the risk is like basically if you don't do the upfront medical exam, IRCC will evaluate the rest of your study permit application first and then invite you to do the medical exam. So it's possible that your application, let's say your application is refused, and then, okay, well, then it's kind of a good thing you didn't do your medical exam because you have to address, whatever reasons for refusal. So it depends on it's a really personal preference. So you can either wait until you have that certainty that IRCC is going to, if they're asking you for a medical exam, it is likely that they will approve your application. It means that they've looked at everything else and there have been no flags so far. Or if you prefer to just do it upfront, like I said, that can help facilitate the processing. So it really depends on the risk level that you're comfortable with. Both are completely valid. And you will, if you're living in one of the designated countries or you're wanting to work in one of those jobs, you will need to do the medical exam to have your application processed. So if you do want to do an upfront medical exam, you need to contact what's called an IRCC panel physician. So IRCC has a list on their website, and you can see we give you the link of all of the physicians that are authorized by IRCC to do a medical exam specifically for immigration purposes. So there's a list on there, and you have to contact that doctor directly to schedule an appointment. I would recommend, if there is more than one doctor available in your area, shop around because they tend to charge different fees. So the fees can vary quite a bit. So you might want to do some shopping in that sense. So like I said, if you want to do an upfront medical exam, great. You just contact your local physician, you do the exam, and then when you apply for your study permit, you'll be uploading that appointment confirmation. So you will not get a copy of your medical exam results. That is never shared with you. It's always sent directly to IRCC, but you will get a paper that kind of confirms that the appointment took place. So you'll be able to upload that in your application, or if you want to wait until after you submit your application, like I said, you'll get a request from IRCC inviting you to do the medical exam. And then at that point, you can contact your panel physician, do the exam, and then keep waiting for a decision on your application. We're giving you the link here just for more info about the medical exams in general. And this is important, once you have a medical exam, those results remain valid for 12 months. So just keep that in mind. So in order for your study permit application to be processed, you do need to complete all of the steps and you need to submit all of the required documents for the application. So, if you're missing documents, the officer should be giving you a deadline to provide them. Your application will stay pending until you submit that missing document. Same thing if you haven't been able to give your biometrics, your application again will remain pending until you're able to provide your biometrics. So even if you're, like I said, if you're missing something, it's still a good idea to apply, at least so that your application is pending and not just not submitted. And then very important to always keep IRCC informed. So if there's any part of your application after you've submitted that's giving you a hard time, you need more time for anything, definitely reach out to IRCC using the web form, whether that's providing a document that you were missing or an explanation of why you still can't provide that missing document. And then hopefully you'll have a document proving that kind of inability to get that document. So whether that's like a screenshot of the visa office or the passport office that's closed because of COVID or whatever, just make sure you keep IRCC informed to avoid your application just being refused due to missing documentation. Okay, we did it. We got through all of that info, and now is the time to actually generate an application. So give me one moment and we will do this. Okay. So on my screen, you can see I'm on the IRCC website where you can sign into your secure account. I'm just going to have a quick sip here. I will not be going over how to create an account, but we are sharing with you the tutorial link on how to create that. And you'll see there's two options. So, option one is the GC key, which is just creating a login specifically for the IRCC website, or you can use what's called a sign-in partner, which would allow you to use your Canadian banking info. And that's usually only if you have a Canadian bank already. Otherwise, we're going to go with GC key. So let's go with GC key. So I'm just going to log in here. Okay, so continue. You always have to accept the terms and conditions. And then you'll see when you create your own account, you'll have to create a series of security question and answers that you'll definitely want to save somewhere that you'll remember, because you need to answer these questions every time you log in. So, okay, so this is my fictitious student, Isabella, and this is what an IRCC account looks like. So here in this top section, you'd see if you had submitted an application, you would see it here. And then if you've started an application but haven't quite submitted it yet, you would see it down here. So we don't have anything in here yet. So we are going to go ahead and start that. So you want to click way down here, start an application, apply to come to Canada. And then you can ignore this personal reference code because we don't have one. And so you want to go down here. We don't want express entry or international experience Canada. We want study permit. So this first one. So this screen here, this is where the eligibility questionnaire starts. So this is the series of questions that you're going to answer, and it's going to help the IRCC tool generate your correct forms for your document checklist for your application. So what would you like to do in Canada? We're going to click on study. How long? Temporarily, more than 6 months. Select the code that corresponds to your passport. That's pretty straightforward. Current country or territory of residence. So this is important as well. It's possible that you're not living in your country of citizenship. That's fine. Just make sure that you indicate here where you're currently living. Do you have a family member who is a Canadian citizen or permanent resident? Yes or no. And then birthday, that's pretty straightforward as well. I'm just gonna pick over here. Okay, are you a lawful permanent resident of the United States? Yes or no. Have you been accepted to a designated learning institution? And we went over what that means. So you're gonna click yes if you have an offer of admission from U Ottawa. Have you visited or lived in any one of the designated countries for 6 consecutive months in the last year? So again, you want to go check that list, see if your country of residence is on that list of designated countries. And if it is, you have to click yes. Have you had a medical exam performed by an IRCC authorized panel physician within the last 12 months? So if you are going to do an upfront medical exam before you apply, then here you would click yes. If you're going to wait until IRCC requests a medical exam from you, then here you would click no. I'm going to say yes. We're going to do it upfront. So we see a few extra questions here, and this is because Isabella, our fictitious student, is from Brazil, and Brazil is eligible for the SDS stream. So you can see, so you might not have these questions based on your country. This will show up if you're applying from an SDS country. So we're going to say no, we're not going to do SDS. So we don't have a GIC, which is a guaranteed investment certificate. We didn't pay our first year of tuition. And no, I haven't had a language test. Okay, what is your marital status? I'm gonna go with never married, single. Province of destination, since University of Ottawa is in Ontario, that's the one you should put. And then they're like, okay, looks like you want a study permit. I do, continue. Continue. Do you have a valid work permit or study permit and need a visa to return to Canada? No. Are you an exchange student? No. You'll click no if you have an offer of admission for a full program at U Ottawa. Is work an essential component of your studies? So again, here's where I was mentioning, if your offer of admission says co-op or an internship or something on the offer of admission, then you can put yes and upload your offer of admission twice. If it says nothing on your offer of admission, then you should put no. Are you a spouse, common law partner, or child of certain skilled worker or international students? No, but again, answer on your personal situation. Are you a recipient of one of these scholarships? No. Are you accompanying a family member that has status in Canada or has recently been approved to Canada? So this would come into play if you are planning to come with family. Otherwise, though, you should put no. Have you ever committed, been arrested for, or been charged with or convicted of any criminal offense in any country? Again, answer based on your situation. Do you want to submit an application for a family member? So if you did want to submit an application for, let's say, your spouse or common law partner, or your child, then here's where you would say yes, and then there would be extra documents that appear in your document checklist. But Isabella is going to be coming by herself, so we're going to put no. Are you giving someone access to your application? So if you are planning to use a representative, here's where you would indicate that, but otherwise you can put no. In the past 10 years, have you given your fingerprints and photo, biometrics, for an application to come to Canada? So again, here you would put yes or no, depending if you've already given it before. Isabella hasn't, so we're going to put no. There are fees associated with this application. Will you be paying your fees, or are you fee exempt? There are a few situations where someone might be fee exempt, but the vast majority are not. So you will be, yes, I will be paying my application fees. Are you able to make a digital copy of your documents with a scanner or camera? This is very important for an online application. So you definitely need to be able to either scan your documents or take a good quality photo. Make sure your documents are legible, not blurry. We don't want to give the officer any reason to not understand, or not understand your documents. So yes. Will you be paying your application fees online? And then they list here what methods of payment are allowed. Oh, I forgot to click yes. There we go. Okay, once you've answered the questionnaire, you have an opportunity to review your answers here, and you can see that there's a little pencil. So I would recommend that you do a quick review, quick scan to see if you missed anything. And then if you notice something's wrong, you can click on that pencil to change your answer. This looks good to me. So we're going to go to continue. And then on this screen, they're kind of giving you some tips to keep in mind when submitting your application. So here, now that you've created an application, it will stay in your account, but you have to submit it within 60 days. So anything that stays in your account as pending for more than 60 days will just automatically be deleted. So keep that in mind. You should submit within 60 days, or you'll just have to restart your application. And then in here, the upload documents section, it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of files you're allowed to upload, in what format. So PDF, JPEGs, Word documents. I wouldn't recommend Word documents, obviously. I would PDF them before you upload. And then the maximum file size as well. It can't be bigger than 4 megs. And then it kind of tells you here how it works for an online application. So, after you pay your fees, you're going to have to answer a security question, and then that will be like your electronic signature. So let's continue. Okay, so this is your document checklist. So it looks like this, and you can see here we have the study permit fee, which is $150, and then we also have the biometrics fee, which is $85. So, and then if you're applying for family members, their fees will be added here as well. So the fees will be higher. Okay, so that's how to build a study permit application. I now want to go over kind of each section quickly, and then I will very happily take your questions. So let's start with the first one. Probably one of the most important is the application form itself. So because Isabella is in Brazil applying from outside Canada, it is the 1294 that shows up here. Again, if you're applying inside Canada, it'll be a bit different. It'll be the 5709. So if we try to click on this, it will try to open in a browser, and then you'll get to this screen and it'll just stay like this forever. And the reason is because immigration forms are secured PDFs, and so they don't like browsers. They cannot open in a browser. So you always have to download the form and then save it on your computer, and then open that form from where you downloaded it on your computer. So a couple different ways to do that. I'm talking Windows. I do not have a Mac, so it is a little bit different if you're using an Apple computer. But one way to download is from here. You can see, just move this. There's like a little arrow button here, so you can download it this way. Or if you go back to your document checklist, you can also right-click Save Link As, and then download it that way. So in my case, I've already downloaded the form, so I'm just going to go ahead and open it, and we can look at it together. If my computer cooperates. It's thinking about it. There we go. Okay, so this is what the application form looks like for a study permit from outside Canada. So I'm just going to quickly go over this. UCI. So this is your unique client identifier. If this is your very first application with IRCC, you don't have one, so you can leave it blank. If you do have one, you should put it here. Here's where you can indicate in what language you want service, English or French. This personal details is pretty straightforward. So your name as it appears on your passport or your travel document, birthday, citizenship. Here is important as well, the current country or territory of residence. So, just in case you're not living in your country of citizenship, you'll want to make sure that you indicate where you are currently, and then your status in that country if it's not your country of citizenship. So if you're there, if you're a student somewhere else, for example, you definitely want to make sure that you indicate it here, and then the dates of that status. So if you're a citizen, it grays this out because obviously there's no expiry date for that. But if you were to click something else, then it would indicate that. You'll see it's a very smart form. So as you fill stuff out, it will gray stuff out that's not applicable to you. And then if you hover your mouse somewhere, it kind of gives you a hint of what they're looking for as well. Okay, so let's keep going. Have you previously been married or in a common law relationship? Here's where you'd indicate that. A little bit here about what languages you speak and whether or not you've taken a test from an official language test, just a yes or no. I'm gonna put no. Here's where you put in your passport info. And then whether or not you have a national identity document. So this I get questions about a lot. Not all countries have this. It's not the same thing as a driver's license or like a health card or anything like that. It's really like a very specific identity document that every citizen of that country has. If your country has one, great, put it in. And you can see here, if you put yes, the only thing they ask for is the document number and the country of issue. The issue date and the expiry date are not mandatory fields because not all countries have an issue date or an expiry date. So just put in what you have available for your document if you have a document. We're going to put no for Isabella. Are you a lawful permanent resident of the United States? Yes or no. As soon as you put no, it kind of grays out the rest. Contact information. So here's where you would put in your current mailing address. Because you're applying online, you don't have to stress too much about this. Just put the info you have available for your address. I know depending on the country, it can be sometimes it might not be like specifically your home. It might be like a neighborhood or something like that, but just put what you can. And then what's more important than the mailing address is your email address. So because you're going to be applying online, any correspondence from IRCC, you're going to get an email notification to go check your IRCC account for the secured message. So definitely make sure that in this email address field, you put the email address that you're most likely to check, and regularly check your spam or junk mail because there's a chance that sometimes the message will go there. And then phone number, pretty straightforward. Okay, so details of intended study in Canada. Here's where you'd put in the info for your program at U-Ottawa. So the level, and then for your field of study, it's okay if your exact program is not on there. Just pick the closest thing, or pick other. It's not a huge deal because you're going to be uploading your letter of acceptance, which will have the actual program on there. Put the complete address of the school, the designated learning institution. So every school in Canada has one of these. U-Ottawa's number is on your offer of admission. I believe it's on document B, which is the last page of your offer of admission. You should find it there. Or otherwise, you could also just Google IRCC, designated learning institution list, and you'll have the list of all of them in Canada, and you'll be able to search for U-Ottawa that way. But it is on your offer of admission as well. Duration of expected study. This is a question I get a lot as well. It doesn't need to be the exact dates, but so just go with the month, like the first day and or the last day of the month. And then you should be kind of guesstimating it based on the length of your program. So if you're an undergrad student, most undergrad programs are 4 years. So just calculate 4 years. And then normally, IRCC is supposed to automatically give any kind of study permit applicant an extra 3 months or 90 days beyond the expected completion date of their program, to give them time to like transition and graduate and that kind of thing. But to make sure that you get it, it's a good idea to ask for that proactively. So Isabella, if she's starting her program in September of 2022, 4 years, brings us to 2027, because it's winter. Winter is the last term. And then let's say she finishes in April plus 3 months. So we're going to ask for July 31st, 2027. So same logic applies for a master's program or a PhD. Just take the expected duration of that program, pick whatever the last term is, add 3 months. And then that's what you can put there. For the cost of your studies, again, this does not need to be exact. It can be an estimate. So using that tuition fees calculator tool that we talked about earlier, maybe a colleague can put it in the chat again, but you can put the cost of your studies. And again, we're talking about the cost of your studies for your first year of studies. So tuition fees for 1 year, and then the room and board, which is cost of living, IRCC, estimates that it's 10,000 Canadian. So that's what you can put there. Excuse me. I will have another sip. Okay. Funds available for your stay. So the amount that you put here is really going to be based on the financial documents that you're uploading as part of your study permit application. So it should, at the minimum, cover your tuition fees for your first year and your room and board or living expenses for the first year. So make sure that this is always higher than this. And then you can indicate here who your expenses will be paid by. So in her case, it's parents, and if it's other, just know you'll have to type it in there if it's your aunt or some kind of other sponsor, or if it's yourself. Okay, so parents. Have you had any post-secondary education? So here's where you would indicate if yes. So this is anything above high school or secondary school. So if you've had any post-secondary, even if it's like a year or a term, or let's say you're a grad student, you did an undergrad, this is where you would indicate it here, the highest level of your post-secondary education. So that's what you would put there. For employment, here's where you would give your details of any job that you've had for the past 10 years. And if you've never had a job, which is totally fine, you would just put what you have been doing. So, you know, whether that's a student, anything like that, and you would put this in chronological order. So you would start with the most recent. So what are you doing now? Are you a student now? If yes, that's what you would put here. And then you would go backwards for the past 10 years of your activities. If you run out of room, because there's only 3, you can see there's only 3 fields here, know that you can kind of elaborate in the client information section of your application, which, let me just go back, is down here. So we'll talk about that a little bit more after. Okay, so that's employment. And then you get to the background information. So it's a series of questions, yes or no questions that you have to answer truthfully. They're pretty straightforward, so I don't want to spend too much time on them. But this one is important. So have you ever remained beyond the validity of your status, attended school without authorization, or worked without authorization in Canada? Have you ever been refused a visa or permit, denied entry, or ordered to leave Canada or any other country or territory? So this is a pitfall. So some students think they only mean Canada, and then they don't disclose that they were denied a US visa, for example. It's any country. So really, any previous refusal you've had, you do have to disclose it here. So you would check yes, and then you'd be able to give a little bit of an explanation here of the refusal. And then here's also, you know, have you previously applied to enter or remain in Canada? So let's say this isn't your first application, you'd have to put yes, and again, explain here. Have you ever been, you know, committed? Have you ever committed or been arrested for a crime? Did you ever serve in the military? This is important. This comes up a lot as well. So you always answer truthfully. You have to detail if you did. You do have to provide the dates and of service and the countries or territories where you served. Have you ever been a member associated with any political party or other organization? Yes or no. And then another question here. And then here's where you would consent to IRCC contacting you about their services. So this is optional, yes or no. And then we've come to the end. So because you're going to be applying electronically, you do just type in your name as it appears on your passport. You do not print this and sign this by hand. And then you put it in today's date. So, and then once you filled it all out, you do need to, you see this validate button here, you need to validate. And that's basically, oh, I guess I didn't click on something. There we go. We want to put single. Okay. So then we try again. So the form is very intuitive like that. So if it goes through and checks if there's anything wrong. And if there isn't, you'll see a message like this. So validation completed successfully. If you're applying online, you do not need to sign this form. You're going to be asked to provide an electronic signature after. So once it's validated, you'll see barcodes appear at the bottom of the document. That's good. You need that. So then you always want to save it once you've validated so that the barcodes are still there. And then we can go back to our checklist and we can upload it. So go to upload file, choose file, go to where you saved it, which is here, upload file. And then success. So then we return to our documents. And you can see that now this form here is green because we've gone ahead and uploaded it. So slowly but surely, as you upload stuff, everything here will turn green. And once everything mandatory is filled out, you'll see the submit application button show up at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so that's the application form. Okay, we still have 25 minutes. Let's go over the other form really quickly, which is the 5707. Again, depending on your country, it might not show up here in your document checklist for you. But if it does, it looks a little bit like this. So it's just a family information form. So you're basically just going to be providing info about your family. So yourself, the applicant, whether you have a spouse or common law partner. If you don't, just put MA, NA. And you have to fill this out. Even if the person's not coming to Canada with you, you can indicate yes, no, if they're coming. Your mother, your father, parent, if you're like an adoptive parent, for example. And then this form is a little bit confusing. So you can see here, if you have no spouse or common law partner, you have to read and sign below. So you have to sign here and date. And then section B is about your children. So you have to include all your kids. And then if you have no children, you have to sign and date here. And then section C is the certification for the whole form. So you have to sign and date here. So just to recap, if you have no spouse or common law partner and no kids, you are signing this form 3 times and dating it. And then this one, you just save and it doesn't have any validation. So for the signature, you have a few options. So you can either, if your Adobe software allows you to have a digital signature, you can put that there, or you can print and sign this one. This one's not like the other one. Okay, so that's that form. The next section is letter of acceptance. So this is obviously your offer of admission, your full one, including document B, which is the last page. Make sure you upload the entire thing. Passport. So this is obviously your passport, but it's not just the first page with the biographical data. You want to include any page that has, stamps or visas or markings, anything like that. So you'll want to scan or take photos, good photos of that. And then this is important for each element here in your document checklist. You can only upload one file. So for each section, you're going to have to merge. If you have more than one document, you'll have to merge it all into one file and then upload that one file. So proof of means of financial support, click on this little instructions here. This kind of gives you an idea of documents that you can use. So bank statements, bank draft, pay stub, employment letter, anything like that. Here is where you would have a notarized letter of the person giving you money. If it's, if the money is in someone else's account, if you're getting a self-funded research bursary, that's a grant or a scholarship, you can include part of your offer of admission. All of that would be here, again, in one file. Digital photo. Here, if you click on it, it kind of gives you an idea, again, of what the photo needs to look like. So it gives you the details about the size, the pixels, the color, all of that. And then we get to optional documents here. So here is the Schedule 1 application for a temporary resident visa. So even though this is optional, if you are applying from a visa required country, I would recommend that you fill this out. And then I'm just going to show you what this form looks like really quick. And then I will stop talking, I promise, and answer your questions. Okay, so this is what the Schedule 1 application for temporary residence looks like. It's pretty straightforward. So you indicate who you are, your name, birthday, and then here's where you would explain if you did any military service or anything like that, and then any previous country or territory, any previous country other than your country of citizenship or your current country of residence, you'd have to indicate it here. And then you validate once again, and then you upload that. Client information. So this is kind of your catch-all place. So this section is where you would include any extra info that isn't included elsewhere in the application. So your study plan, any additional documents that your visa office might require, really like anything and everything that doesn't fit anywhere else, this is where you would put it. So at the very least, I would hope that you would have a study plan in this section. And then that study plan would ideally be joined with any supporting documents, any evidence of what you're claiming in your study plan. And that's it. Okay, so that's it for the walkthrough. So in terms of quickly next steps, make sure you accept your offer of admission if you want to study at U Ottawa before the deadline. Apply for your study permit as soon as possible to avoid delays. Enroll in your courses once enrollment opens. Usually that's May for undergrad, June for grad. We have tutorials here you can check to see how to enroll in courses. And then we'll also be offering more information sessions like this, your orientation. That info will come to you by email. So how to reach us. Every week we offer virtual Q&A sessions called SOS Immigration. So if I didn't answer your question today or you think of more questions, no problem, just attend the upcoming Q&A session and we're happy to answer it then. We offer them every week on Mondays or Thursdays. So you'll be able to consult the schedule on our website, which maybe my colleague can put in the chat. And then alternatively, if you can't attend the SOS session, definitely just send us an email. We also have our immigration FAQs. So if you have a question, it's possible that a student had the exact same question. So I would definitely encourage you to check those out. Lots of useful info on there. And then we also have the recordings of previous information sessions like this one. So make sure to check those out as well, in case you want to watch more videos. And that's it. I have talked enough. Thank you so much if you've made it this far. Like, congrats. I know this was a lot of info, a lot of listening, a lot of knowledge. So thank you so much. Have a great day. We will be sending a follow-up email to all students with the recording to this session and the PowerPoint. So stay tuned for that. Take care, stay safe, and hope to see you on campus soon. Bye.